This episode is sponsored by BetterHelp. The holidays are over, the decorations are down, and suddenly everything feels a little empty. It's normal to feel the winter blues after the holiday excitement. January, February, and March are by far my least favorite months of the year. It's cold and dark, and I have to get some extra vitamin D on board. I also need to keep my regular scheduled appointments with my therapist. So if you're feeling that post-holiday funk, I definitely suggest you checking out BetterHelp because maybe it's time to talk. You might also be one of those people like me who makes New Year's resolutions and you get super motivated. So maybe you need someone behind you to hold you accountable and come up with a plan to meet your goals. BetterHelp is super convenient, totally online. You have a therapist right at your fingertips whenever you need them. So head over to betterhelp.com/wifeofcrime1 to get 10% off your first month. That's betterhelp.com/wifeofcrime1 for 10% off your first month.
Imagine what's possible when learning doesn't get in the way of life. At Capella University, our game-changing FlexPath learning format lets you set your own deadlines so you can learn at a time and pace that works for you. It's an education you can tailor to your schedule. That means you don't have to put your life on hold to pursue your professional goals. Instead, enjoy learning your way and earn your degree without missing a beat. A different future is closer than you think with Capella University. Learn more at capella.edu.
This podcast is an unscripted, unedited conversation about true crime. We take the cases very seriously, but I don't take myself seriously at all, and neither should you. Welcome to Wife of Crime.
So, Russ, I think most people can agree that some of the most evil humans in world history were the Nazis. But for every bad character in that story, there are heroes among them. Actual Nazi hunters that spent their life after the Holocaust hunting these evil men down. This is just one of those stories. This is the hunt and takedown of Adolf Eichmann. Everyone, welcome back to Wife of Crime, a true crime podcast where I tell my husband Russ true crime stories and he reacts to them.
What's up, folks? It's your boy Russ, aka 60-minute IPA, aka I got a Coors Light for a backup, and that's all my AKAs.
Oh, I'm Jess, aka Alice in Wonderland, because I just got out of the rabbit hole. I was planning that one.
It's funny, too, because your hand motion was like a DJ. You, like, put your hand out like you were scratching.
So, we're back for another episode. I want to take a second before we get started with this episode really quick. We're not going to talk deeply about this because we both don't want to get upset. But we unfortunately had to say goodbye to our beautiful Biggie Smalls. And it was devastating and horrible, and it's been a horrible week. But we want to thank everybody for reaching out. He was a part of the show. He used to walk around in the background and make lots of noise and
cry at the door while we're recording and
just very mischievous. He was our sweet, stubborn boy, and we loved him so much. He was 13 years old and a huge part of our life. So thank you to everybody who reached out and sent us messages and all of your love, because he is missed more than you guys will ever know.
Yeah, thanks guys for reaching out.
And that's it, because we don't want to cry.
Yeah.
All right. So on the Patreon, we are going to be doing American Murder, Lacey Peterson. It's #1 right now on Netflix. Do you remember that case, Lacey and Scott Peterson?
Nah, but I could probably predict someone died.
Well, yes. And I think it would be a good one to do because we covered the case of Scott Peterson and Lacey Peterson years ago. I think it was like 2019 when we covered it. And Russ was super annoying during that episode.
That's messed up.
You were.
What'd I
A lot
do?
of people thought you were annoying. I thought you were annoying. So I'm curious how the documentary is going to go. It's a 3-parter, so you better be ready for 3 hours of true crime.
After this, I feel like the old SpongeBob meme, like, all right, I'll just head out. You could just do this episode by yourself.
No, but I mean, people did comment that you annoyed them, which is fine because a lot of them are still here. See, this just shows you can be annoyed by someone and still love them.
That's marriage.
It is, yeah. So I'm curious to see how they present the case. I'm curious to see if it's biased on either side because, you know, the Innocence Project picked up Scott Peterson's case and is trying to prove his innocence because he's maintained his innocence this whole time. And there are multiple true crime creators I will not name that think he's innocent as well. And I'm curious to see how you feel once you watch this documentary, since you don't remember the case at all.
Well, what I've learned from the Innocence Project thing, it's not the Innocence Project as far as there's just like one of them, because that's what I thought. There's like a bunch of Innocence Projects chapters, or I don't know. It's like the Freemasons or something. There's little houses all over the place where you wear hats and try to get people out of jail.
Well, no, like there's one Innocence Project, and then there's like multiple other organizations who are called Innocence Projects that aren't affiliated with the innocenceproject.org.
I guess whoever's first could be the Innocence Projects, and everyone else could be the other Innocence Project.
Yeah, that's what this is. It's like the LA Innocence Project or something. But they took his case on, so I'm curious to hear what you think, and I'm curious to like re-examine this case because it has been. I mean, we did it in like 2019 or 2020. It's been like 4 or 5 years since I even researched all the details.
And I don't remember what happened, but I'll probably, like, while I'm listening, like, oh yeah, that sounds familiar.
Yeah, you definitely will. So that's what we're going to cover for August True Crime and Chill. And you guys can head over to our Patreon to check out all of our True Crime and Chills. And Russ has the shout outs.
You know how it goes, folks. You join Patreon, you listen to a bunch of extra content and get stuff, and I shout you out. Or don't go over there and just keep listening. That's cool too.
Yes.
So the people that joined this week are Stacy, Shayna, Larry, Chris, Brittany, Jesse, Milla, Michelle, Melissa, Adnan. Oh shit, the guy joined us from Syria.
Does not say Adnan.
Yes, it does. ADNAN.
No, that says Adrian.
That's an N.
It's an R and an I.
But they're attached, so it looks like an N. Okay, so that's Adrian. I didn't write this, folks. Jess writes like with a bunch of circles. Trisha, Tia, Debbie, Katie, Sandra, Mary, Angela, Debbie, Sarah, Jake, Brooke, Jessica, Ella, Samantha, Sonia, Gigi, Justin, Nicole, and Mary Berry. Shout out to you guys. I got this.
Cheers to you guys.
Yeah, cheers. I got this Coors Light that's mediocre at best, but the mountains are blue, so I'm going to drink it. They're not a sponsor. Obviously, because I called their beer mediocre.
Coors Light, mediocre at best. It's pretty much beer-flavored water.
Nah, but it's good when it's like super cold with wings, you know?
It is. Definitely. On a hot summer day.
And Red Bull gives you wings, but I'm talking about wings that you eat. So
your brain is so random.
All right. So also, I have review of the week. All right. So review of the week this week is from Allie Catching Fish.
Oh.
It says, "Don't mess with Jess. You guys are awesome. Russ is crazy and Jess is less crazy. You crack me up, and I'm so proud when I share your podcast with a friend or family, and they're like, oh my mold. These two are hilarious, and Jess is so intelligent. Keep it up and let me know how the pond in the yard is going. Thinking about trying that." So thanks, Allie. Appreciate that. I don't know if I'd recommend a pond. Our water's green, but the fish are alive.
Yeah, our water's pretty green. We can't really figure out how to ungreen it. But it's also keeping them alive because the predators can't see. Like the birds can't see them.
Yeah, they got
foxes can't see them.
They got herrings that'll come eat your fish and stuff. And I feel responsible for them, and I don't like responsibility.
They're pets that we inherited, besides the 3 koi. But
Yeah, so
far,
you could try it, but it costs money. It depends on how much money and time you got.
That's true.
It's not like, I mean, we're kind of thugging it out. I got ghetto fish, and I kind of just make my pond ghetto and leave it. But just, they get fed, and there's plants in there and stuff.
No, I mean, I think they're thriving. They're thriving in our hood pond. I think it's good. They're doing great. They're all fed every day, and, their water's just a little green. But don't they like algae? I think it's good.
No, there's a certain level of algae and stuff that's good. And our fish are just staying alive, and other people's fishes on the Facebook forums that I joined. Their fish are always dying because they're probably doing too much to their water.
Yeah. I mean, Russ's motto in life is don't do too much.
Yeah, like Jess, her AKA is doing too much. Like
Whatever.
That's why all the plants in our house are now fake, because she watered them all too much and they're dead, so we only could have plastic plants.
Anyway, so this is going to be a long episode because, like I said in the beginning, I've been down rabbit holes for the last 4 days. Like, I just couldn't stop. I became obsessive, which is not rare for me.
That's okay. It kept you quiet.
Oh, what a jerk!
I didn't mean it. You were like just in the other room, like reading and cleaning and listening to podcasts. And...
Wow, what a dick!
It just came. It didn't come out right.
Okay,
but you can be quiet if you want.
Well, I love history, and I really wanted to tell a story about spies. So when deciding what to do for this episode, I wanted to find a case that combines crime, spies, and history. And I didn't have to look very far back. On February 20th, 1920, a political party was formed that would change the course of history and would show the world that evil exists and can be spread like a cancer on a massive scale. This political party was known as the National Socialist German Workers' Party, aka the Nazi Party.
Get me some Nazis. That's my Brad Pitt impression, yeah, from what's the movie? Inglourious Bastards.
Yeah, that's a great movie.
Oh, and what's the one where the Nazi dude is played by the guy with the blonde hair? And he plays it so good, and like the family's hiding under the board.
Oh, I know which one you're talking about.
Oh, you hate him so much.
You hate him so much the whole time. It's also
Inglourious Bastards.
Is it Inglourious Bastards? It might be. Yeah, it might be Inglourious Bastards. Oh yeah, you hate him so much.
He plays that role so good.
He does. Well, everyone has heard of the Nazis and the Holocaust. But the lack of knowledge surrounding these subjects, especially among people our age and younger, and especially us Americans, is actually astounding. An organization called claimsconference.org conducted a survey a couple years ago that sadly highlighted this. 41% of Americans, and specifically 66% of millennials polled, had no idea what Auschwitz was.
Oh, wow.
Do you know what Auschwitz was?
Yeah, because I watched Schindler's List.
Oh, okay.
That was a tough movie, too. But
that was a tough movie.
It's probably because this younger generation, they haven't come out with a Nazi movie about it.
They've come out with a lot of movies about the Nazis. But
not in recent history, recent memory, because people only know stuff that they've watched in movies recently.
1/3 of Americans believe substantially less Jews were killed during the Holocaust than actually were. How many do you think were killed during the Holocaust?
Hundreds of thousands?
6 million Jews were killed between 1939 and 1944. 5 years. That is insanity.
Between what years?
1939 and 1944.
That's crazy because a lot of our parents were probably born around that time.
Well, our grandparents were.
Well, yeah.
My
'cause
grandmother.
My mom was born in the early 60s.
Yeah.
So, but her mom, my grandma, like they were alive while this was going on. And it seems like it wasn't in our, like, it just seems far away because we haven't experienced it. But people that are alive have been through this.
Yeah, it's insane. There were 40,000 concentration camps and ghettos in Europe, and 45% of Americans can't name a single solitary one. The Holocaust is a stain on our world history, from which many lessons can be learned. But in every ugly story with evil characters, there are heroes too. There is no evil without good to counteract it. So I'm interested in characters that devoted their life after the Holocaust to hunting down these evil men. The Nazi hunters.
Oh, like the show on Prime.
Yes.
With Al Pacino.
Yes, which is an amazing show.
Good show.
Very amazing show. It was not necessarily true, but great show. So today I'm telling you the story of one of the greatest covert operations to be carried out, and all about the 11 Mossad agents, and specifically 2 Israeli spies who took down one of the most evil men to ever live. Are you ready?
Yeah.
So I'm not going to go into too much detail about the history of the Nazis and Adolf Hitler, even though I love to because it's fascinating, but I will give you an overview of why they became so popular. So the Nazis' rise to power in Germany was a result of a mix of economic hardship, political chaos, and widespread fear amongst Germans. After World War I, Germany was struggling a lot, and the Weimar Republic, which was supposed to be their new democracy, was very weak and unstable. The Nazi Party took advantage of this situation by promising to fix the country's problems and make Germany powerful again. They used propaganda to spread fear about communism and blame the Jews for many of the country's troubles. By appealing to people's frustrations and hopes, Adolf Hitler and his followers were able to take control and set up a harsh, disgusting, totalitarian regime. Their rise shows how leaders can use people's fear and frustration to gain power and destroy democratic systems. Let this be a lesson to all of us, especially when politics gets heated and polarizing in our own country, to not blindly trust the media or the politicians, but instead, individuals should conduct their own research on things.
Hashtag vote for Russ. He's the one you could trust.
There you go. To find the truths and avoid falling prey to propaganda. That's the only thing I'm going to say about politics, because we don't talk about that. But keep that in mind, folks, as you hear this story.
Well, my political opinion is if you love a politician, they don't love you back, man.
They don't.
It's always crazy when people are so dedicated to a particular politician. Like, these people don't give a shit about you. They just want to keep their job.
Absolutely. And this entire story about the Nazis, when you watch, you know, there's an amazing podcast that I listen to. It's like multiple parts and multiple seasons, and it's all about Adolf Hitler and how he rose to power. And listening to it is fascinating. Like how charismatic he was. He was a great speaker. He gave awesome speeches. He knew how to play these people, and they fell so prey to it.
There's something on the internet where they translated his speeches into English with his voice, and he's doing his screaming speeches, but in English.
Wow.
And you can watch it. It's kind of crazy. It doesn't sound as intense when he's not speaking German. German, to me, sounds very intense.
Mm-hmm. It does.
Like an intense language. I don't know what they're saying. They could be saying you're very beautiful, but it sounds like they're saying fuck you.
It does. You're right. Well, Adolf Hitler was a master at propaganda, and he was charismatic and also completely nuts. Germans as a culture at that time were desperate for a character like him to motivate and mobilize. But absolute power corrupts absolutely. And that's exactly what happened. And this led to World War II. And in 1945, at the end of the war, the world found out what was actually going on, which was the mass slaughter of the Jewish people in Europe. This was later named the Holocaust.
So it wasn't called the Holocaust while it was going on?
No one really knew what was happening.
Well, the world was small, you couldn't really speak to each other across the world easily like we can now.
Yeah, they hid it. The Nazis hid all of this until all of the troops took over Germany and started liberating the camps. These soldiers would just walk up on these concentration camps and find tons of dead bodies. It was insanity. So fast forward, the year is 1960. Zvi Aharoni, a Mossad spy, goes to Buenos Aires to follow a tip. He is told that a man named Ricardo Clement has been living there for some time now. The tip came from a man named Lothar Hermann. So Zvi meets with him to hear what he has to say. Lothar tells Zvi that his daughter started dating a kid named Klaus. The moment he met the boy, he knew that Klaus had to be the son of this Ricardo Clement. His daughter gave Lothar Ricardo Clement's address, and Lothar gave it to Zvi. Zvi Aharoni pulled money from his pocket. It was an Argentine bill, and he cut it in half. He gave one half to Lothar, and he said, if anyone comes to talk to you about what we just discussed, and they don't have the other half of this bill, don't trust them. Don't say a word. And with that, Zvi leaves Lothar and heads to the address. When he pulled up, it's a rundown shack in a poor neighborhood. This couldn't be where Ricardo Clement would ever live. He would never live in a place like this, he thought. As he approaches the house, he realizes it's abandoned. So he goes to the post office to get information and a forwarding address. And he found out that the family moved just 3 weeks ago. And they explicitly would not give a forwarding address. This made Zvi convinced that this was Ricardo Clement's old home, and he was on his trail. His investigation eventually led him to a small rural area on the outskirts of town. And he saw a little house and decided to park about a mile down the road and start surveying the house. On April 27th, 1960, at 7:45 p.m., a bus from San Fernando pulled up in front of the little house and stopped. A man got off the bus all alone. This man was Ricardo Clement, a.k.a. Adolf Eichmann, the architect of the Holocaust.
That's wild. I wonder if Adolf was a popular name back then.
It must be, yeah.
Because I would assume there's not many Adolfs today.
No, probably not.
That would suck. They probably call him A Dog or something. Like, what's your name? A.
Well, this man was the man who single-handedly orchestrated every detail of what the Nazis called, quote, the final solution.
Evil shit.
The extermination of all of Europe's Jews. This man had the blood of 6 million Jews, men, women, and children on his hands. Zvi Aharoni was only a few hundred yards away from him. Zvi, his mother, and his brother were the only surviving members of his family. Every single other member died in the Holocaust. So imagine standing there. You've been searching for this man who is a Nazi in hiding in Argentina, who's been using an alias. And you go to this tiny little village in the middle of nowhere, and a bus pulls up, and the dude just gets off the bus and walks home from work. So Zvi watched as Eichmann walked into the small house and shut the door behind him.
How do you not go kill him?
Exactly. That's what I'm thinking.
Even if you don't do it right there, you just do it when it's nice and easy. Like, oh, you killed my family?
So Zvi watched Eichmann walk into the small house and shut the door behind him. He quickly ran to his car and the next morning sent a telegram to Mossad. Mossad is like the CIA for Israel, by the way. Okay, that's who Mossad is.
Oh.
So he sent a telegram to Mossad, and the telegram said, "The driver is red." This was a coded message they had agreed on, which meant he has located Eichmann and the mission was going to move forward. The mission was called Operation Finale. Last year, Save More Money was the most popular New Year's resolution in America. Clearly, a lot of us feel like our money is slipping through our fingers. Well, I don't know about you, but I'm not the best saver, and I don't know much about investing until I started saving and investing with Acorns. Turns out you don't have to be an expert at all because Acorns will recommend a diversified portfolio that fits you and your money goals. And I always thought that when people say, "Ooh, I invest in stocks," that they had a ton of money or something. Well, you don't need to be rich. Acorns lets you invest with the spare money you've got right now. You can literally start with $5. And you know you guys are spending that at Starbucks on these fancy lattes. So skip the coffee and invest with Acorns. You don't even need a ton of time. Like you can just sign up and start investing within 5 minutes. Head over to acorns.com/wifeofcrime or download the Acorns app to start saving and investing for your future today. That's acorns.com/wifeofcrime. You guys already know because we have been talking about them for a while now. Viia Hemp is by far one of our favorite sponsors we've ever had, okay? We use their products all the time. Maybe you're a little like me. You're a little anxious. You have a hard time settling down. You're kind of wound up a lot. If that's you, Viia Hemp products are for you. Check out their website. You will find something that speaks to you. Maybe you're like Russ. You have a hard time sleeping because you have bad nerve pain or chronic pain. Then Viia Hemp is for you because their gummies will help you get some quality sleep. Maybe you're looking to have a really good time. Maybe you just really like edibles. You want to laugh. You want to get the munchies. You want to watch a movie and have a really strong belly laugh. Then Viia Hemp products are for you, okay? They're literally for everybody. So head over to viiahemp.com, promo code wifeofcrime1 to get 15% off your first order. That's VIIAHEMP.com. wifeofcrime1 for 15% off your first order. Adolf Eichmann's rise to power started similarly to Hitler himself. Both men were actually failures at pretty much everything they tried to do before becoming Nazis. So in essence, they were both fucking losers.
Yeah, until they took over the world.
Well, they were losers before then.
I mean, now they're loser piece of shits.
They are. Eichmann dropped out of high school. And then he dropped out of a mechanical engineering program because he wasn't smart enough to stay on top of things. He bounced around working odd jobs. And then in 1932, at the age of 26, he joined the Austrian Nazi Party. He quickly went from being just part of the party and joined the SS. Have you heard of the SS?
Super suckers.
Do you know who the SS is?
Yeah, that's the Germans. They were in Call of Duty, World at War.
So the SS, aka the Schutzstaffel, were Adolf Hitler's personal bodyguard unit. And they would later become Hitler's executive force. They were his inner circle, his protectors. And they swore their allegiance to Hitler above everything, even above the Nazi Party.
I wonder if they'll have the same mustache.
It was like a cult, honestly. They swore allegiance to him over everything. His advance in the SS happened fast because Adolf Eichmann studied Judaism, and he studied the Torah, the history of the Jews, and he even learned Hebrew. It was like he was studying his enemy, essentially. Within 2 years, in 1934, he was hired as an expert on Zionism by the Nazi Department of Jewish Affairs. And by 1937, he was the man in charge of expelling all of the Jews from German territory. He is the one who came up with the idea for the Jews wearing the yellow Star of David. Have you seen that?
Like, you put it on their arm, right?
On their chest. So in the beginning of the Holocaust, it started first with them segregating all the Jews and putting them in ghettos and concentration camps, moving them out of German territory. So they had to wear Star of David to show that they were Jewish.
I always wondered.
And he came up with it.
I always wondered, though, how do you know if someone's Jewish just by looking at them? Because most of the time it's the same skin color. It's the same, like, unless they all have accents or speak different languages, or, you know, how does a Jewish person go, I'm German?
Well,
just to not get killed and save their family and then figure it out, you know?
I mean, there might have been German Jews who pretended to be German, not German Jews, but pretended to be just German.
Yeah, I would have pretended.
But you have to remember that this slowly happened over the course of years. And I don't think the Jews that in the beginning knew that this would escalate to this degree, you know?
Yeah.
And it started very insidiously with propaganda, newspapers, radio programs. It started very small and grew and grew and grew. And it got to the point where the Jewish people were kind of defenseless. And, you know, and Jews in general are proud of being Jewish. It's a huge part of their identity as a Jewish person. Adolf Eichmann was the person who came up with the idea of them wearing this yellow Star of David to distinguish them from Germans. He then established the forced immigration program, and he set up a central office of Jewish immigration. So what he would do is he would line up all the Jewish people in like an assembly line. He would make them get rid of all of their belongings, strip everything from their pockets, all their jewelry. Literally all they had were the clothes on their back. They would have to put them all in a pile. He would hand them a visa that expired in 24 hours and say, get out of the country. So everything they owned was given to him. He had all of their possessions and money, and then gave them 24 hours to leave.
How do you get out in 24 hours? That's crazy.
They would just literally walk out of the building and have to get out of the country. And they were all penniless. Little did they know, though, sadly, they were, unfortunately, the lucky ones. Adolf Eichmann became incredibly rich from this. He kept all the money that he stole from each and every one of the 150,000 people that came through his forced immigration program. He also made money by selling anything of theirs that he could. Then, on January 20th, 1942, 15 high-ranking Nazi officials met at a villa in the Berlin suburb of Wannsee to discuss and coordinate the implementation of what they called the final solution of the Jewish question. The final solution was the extermination of the Jews. And in that villa, they named Adolf Eichmann in charge of planning the entire thing. He is the one who created the death camps. He came up with the gas chamber idea. He's the one who ordered all of these ovens to be built and put in these death camps.
Kind of makes me uncomfortable to even hear this.
He created the train schedules with the cargo trains who brought 20,000 Jews a day to their deaths.
That's crazy. Just think about, like, if you ever go to an arena, like Madison Square Garden holds 20,000 people. Imagine that much people per day.
It's
like if you go watch a concert in a nice arena, not a stadium, like, but that's so many people.
It's unfathomable. And when you go to the Holocaust Museum in DC, or me and your sister went to the Jewish Heritage Museum in New York, it's incredibly emotional to walk through, but it gives you an idea of the scale of murder that this is. So May and June of 1944, like I said, 20,000 Jews a day were being sent to the gas chamber. And Eichmann reportedly told his aide, quote, "The operation went like a dream." Eichmann described his assignment as a fantastic opportunity. But in 1944 and 1945, the Nazis began losing the war, and many of the camps were liberated. As troops moved their way into Germany, there were 23 main camps, and the main camps had subcamps, which totaled about 900.
What troops were moving into Germany?
Soviet Union had a lot of troops moving into Germany. English, French, American. The Allied troops were moving into the German territory.
Gotcha.
For a long time, they couldn't get into Germany. Germany was taking over. They took over Poland. They moved, towards Europe, whereas all the other Allied troops were moving into Germany to try to get to the hub of the Nazi Party. So there were 23 main camps. The main camps had subcamps, which totaled about 900. And there were also about 500 brothels filled with sex slaves. On January 27th, 1945, Soviet troops liberated Auschwitz, the largest of the Nazi death camps, personally designed by Adolf Eichmann. When the soldiers arrived, they found 6,000 starving prisoners who were still alive. Adolf Eichmann was originally arrested and taken by U.S. troops to a prisoner of war camp, but he used a fake name, so no one knew who he actually was. He just said that he was like a low-level soldier, like a private or a sergeant.
That's what I was saying I would have done if I was Jewish. I would have been like, my name is Adolf. Or whatever a German name is, my name is Fritz or something.
Mm-hmm. Well, he escaped the POW camp and ended up working as a lumberjack in the mountains of Austria for a few years. And then in 1950, a neo-Nazi group called Odessa smuggled him to Rome, where he bounced from monastery to monastery, and a Catholic bishop by the name of Aloy Hudal, who was a Nazi sympathizer, who helped multiple Nazis get new identities and flee to South America, got him a falsified passport from the Red Cross. His new name would be Ricardo Clement, and he boarded a plane to Buenos Aires.
What, he looked Spanish?
Well, no, he did have dark hair, yeah, actually.
Ricardo.
He could have passed as a Spanish person.
That's crazy.
What's crazy to me is that the
religion-
Catholic Church, so not all of the Catholic Church, I researched this, the Vatican actually just opened up a lot of documents, but there were Nazi sympathizers within the Catholic Church. So the Catholic Church helped a lot of Jews during the Holocaust, but also helped Nazis escape and go to South America. And there's a lot of controversy right now, but the new Pope Francis, opened up a lot of the sealed records from that time to try to sift out what actually happened with the Catholic Church and the Vatican helping Nazis.
Man, don't get me started on the bullshit of organized religion.
We won't. Argentina was a hub for ex-Nazis. It is estimated that about 5,000 Nazis relocated to Argentina. Juan Perón, the president of Argentina, helped organize escape routes from Spain and Italy to smuggle thousands of ex-SS officers and Nazi party members out of Europe.
He must have made a lot of money doing that, because there has to be a motive for doing it.
No, he just loved the Nazi ideas. He was a Nazi sympathizer and agreed with Adolf Hitler and loved Nazi ideals.
Yeah, but it was a wrap for the Nazis at that point. It doesn't matter if you love them or not. They lost the war. It's a wrap. So you could love these ideas all you want, but you're on the losing side of the war. So there has to be something in it for him besides just saying, I like your uniforms.
No, he was a fascist. He liked what they stood for, but maybe there was. Maybe he was lining his pockets. Who knows?
I guarantee it.
Speaking of Nazi uniforms, another thing I found out is that, do you know who designed the Nazi uniforms?
No clue.
Hugo Boss.
Yes. Oh, I saw that recently. Yes.
Of the Nazi uniforms.
Yes, he was. Yes, I was reading that recently, and they were saying how that comes from that.
Yes, Hugo Boss was the designer of the Nazi uniforms, and I mean, they were attractive uniforms in a sense of like very tailored, very well fitted, but they had the swastika on them, and they had a skull and crossbones on them, and he designed it almost to look like S&M. That was his motivation in the design of their uniform, to look like a sadomasochistic suit. So after Eichmann got to Argentina, he began working at the Mercedes-Benz factory and would frequently meet up with other ex-Nazis to drink and hang out. This life of hiding on the run was easy for these scumbags. They had each other. And eventually, Adolf Eichmann's wife and children would make their way to Argentina as well, so he had his whole family with him now. So for 10 years, Adolf Eichmann lived in Argentina. He got comfortable. He thought he would spend his days there escaping the atrocities of his past. But little did he know, there were multiple Nazi hunters looking for him. Like the famous Nazi hunter Sam Wiesenthal, and Israel's secret intelligence agency, Mossad. And now, in this small village across the world, Zvi Zaharoni stares at this man getting off his bus stop on Garibaldi Street. After Zvi sends the coded message to Mossad, the driver is read. He decides to continue following Eichmann and surveying him. So he thought, okay, let me get on the bus 8 stops before his stop, thinking, then I can see where he gets on. Maybe there will be a better place to try to abduct him. Because that's what's going to happen. The plan is to abduct him. So he gets on the bus 8 stops before Eichmann's stop. And he's already on the bus.
Where the hell? So you got to get on the first stop.
As fate would have it, the only seat available
next one
was sitting right behind him.
Mm.
And as V sat there, he literally thought to himself, this man killed my entire family. This man killed 6 million Jews. And he's right in front of me.
Yeah, and I'd be thinking I could stab him in the neck right now.
He could. But the plan for Operation Finale was to abduct him.
Torture.
No. Take him back to Israel so he would be tried by the Jewish people. So the intelligence agency deployed 11 special agents to carry out a mission that they had been planning for months. And while all 11 agents played a critical role in his capture, I'm going to focus on 2 of the spies that, in my opinion, their roles were the most critical. Zvi Zaharoni, the one I've been talking about, the man who located and surveilled Eichmann, and a man named Peter Malkin. And this man was tasked with physically capturing him. All 11 agents flew in on different commercial flights on different days from different cities around the world. They all used false identities and listed Argentina as a pass-through, like not their final destination.
Like a layover flight, maybe.
Exactly. So that the Argentinian government wouldn't suspect anything. Don't forget, Juan Perón is a Nazi sympathizer and would most certainly protect Eichmann.
That's right.
So this mission was not just to capture him, but to abduct him and bring him to Israel undetected so that he could be put on trial, like I said, by the Jewish people.
They would need like a private airplane or something. You can't capture him and fly him commercial.
You'll see. So the Nuremberg trials, have you heard of that? The Nuremberg trials?
I've heard the name, but I have no clue what it is.
Nuremberg trials happened in 1948, and they happened in Germany, and it's where they tried a bunch of Nazis. Essentially, it was like 12 government officials that were sentenced to death, and then another, I think like 8 were sentenced to life in prison, and then 3 of them killed themselves. So it was a bunch of them, but it wasn't these like Nazis that really played a part in killing. It was more government officials who were part of the Nazi party, but weren't necessarily Adolf Hitler's like small circle. A lot of those guys committed suicide directly after the war.
Wow.
Or fled the country and hid out in different countries, mainly South America.
Like, how about the dudes that are just there thinking they're fighting for their country at war and they have no clue what's going on? And wars are usually fought by young men on both sides that don't want to be there for these old people trying to prove points.
Well, I think that there were a ton of those soldiers.
Yeah,
but we're specifically talking today about the SS.
All right, I'm sorry, but I was just wondering about that, like, you know, because...
What are you wondering?
Well, like, how were those people treated that didn't have anything to do with the Nazi camps, but they were at war? Were they treated the same as the Nazis? Because, like, I don't want to be here shooting people either. I want to be home with my wife.
Yeah, a lot of them just went back to their lives in Germany. But we're talking about officers and people on the inside and people who worked at the camps and all that. That's different from the soldiers on the front line.
Absolutely.
So Peter Malkin was a Mossad spy whose family fled to Palestine in 1936. But his sister, Fruma, and her 3 children stayed behind in Germany, along with 150 other relatives who would all be murdered in the Holocaust. At age 12, Peter was recruited by Haganah, which was the old Israeli defense force before Israel was a state. He was recruited as an explosive expert at 12 years old.
Well, he wasn't an expert. They had to teach him.
No, he was recruited as an explosives expert at 12 years old. He was also...
The only thing you're blowing up at 12 is the bathroom.
Russ, I'm telling you, this is in his biography. He also was a master of disguise. And he was an expert in martial arts. He spent 27 years.
I feel like this dude lied on his resume.
He did not.
You can't be that good at that many things.
You can look it up.
At 12 years
No,
old.
at 12 years old, he was recruited by Haganah, but it wasn't until he became a special agent in the Mossad that he was a martial arts expert and a master of disguise, and he became a master spy.
Okay.
He spent 27 years in Mossad, most of his time as a spy and a special agent, and later he became the chief of operations for Mossad. So he is like a true spy. But this mission is what he is most known for. After his sister and her children died, Peter made it his life's mission to kill a top Nazi official for each one of his sister's children. When his boss, Rafi Atin, told him he was going to be the one to physically capture Adolf Eichmann, he was up for the task. He later said in multiple interviews that he felt a responsibility to successfully capture him to the millions of Jewish people. It was an immense pressure, and it was no longer justice just for his sister and her children. He felt a responsibility to all Jews, dead and alive, to tackle this man and bring him down. He practiced nonstop for 1.5 months before flying to Argentina. Like, practice how he's going to tackle him, how he's going to put him in a hold, different holds he can put him in, because he was a martial arts guy.
So he was practicing like jujitsu.
So once all the agents arrived in early May, they spent the next 1.5 weeks spying on Eichmann, establishing his routines, his schedules, who he spoke to. They took photos using cameras in suitcases. This is like something out of a spy novel. They staked out his home for days, paying attention to his family's schedule. There were 3 safe houses that they rented. They made 3 fake license plates. So the car that they planned to use as the escape car when they abducted him would have multiple plates, so it couldn't be like tracked by the license plate.
Yeah, it's like some James Bond shit.
Exactly. On May 11th, 1960, they decided this was the day they were going to carry out the mission. At 7:45 p.m., Zvi drives past the bus stop and parks down the street from Eichmann's house. At 7:40, the bus 203, the one he took every day, arrived, but then kept going. Eichmann was not on the bus.
I had a feeling that he wasn't going to be on the bus this day.
The agents feared that he may have been tipped off, but agreed that they would wait until 8 p.m., and if he didn't show up, they would leave. Just as the men were about to leave, a bus drives down the road. At 8:05, the bus stops, and Eichmann gets off. Zvi, looking through his binoculars, notices that this time, Eichmann was walking with one hand in his jacket pocket. He never did this. And Zvi thought he might have a gun, so he warned the other agents to watch for a weapon. Peter Malkin slowly approaches Eichmann in the middle of the dimly lit road, with his car parked up the street, made to look like it was broken down. He says in Spanish, "Un momento, señor," and then immediately grabs him. The two men fall to the ground and wrestle. Eichmann was screaming and struggling. Peter places him in a chokehold and holds him there until two other agents start running towards them. Zvi speeds the car toward them. The men cover Eichmann with a blanket and throw him in the back of the car and then drive to a safe house.
This would be a good movie.
There is a movie. It's called Operation Finale, and we're going to watch it after we record. Once at the safe house, Eichmann is tied up, and the team needs to get him to admit who he is and somehow get him to sign an agreement to be tried in Israel for his crime.
He has to agree?
Yes, because they wanted proof. They wanted a signature. Just like when you get like a confession and then you sign it, they wanted him to sign a document stating that he agrees to be tried in Israel for his crimes.
That. I don't need his permission.
You do, because they didn't want to have any red tape. They didn't want the Argentinian government to have a reason to not allow it. They didn't want anyone to have a reason to not allow his trial to happen in Israel.
I don't agree with this one. I think they should just not give a shit.
So he keeps insisting that he is Ricardo Clement.
What if he's using a Spanish accent? The best he could.
I think he might have actually. I think he might have actually had a Spanish accent. I'm not totally sure on
this. He said, "That's no me. I live on the 5th floor."
Well, he keeps saying he's Ricardo Clement. Zvi holds up a picture of him in his Nazi uniform and says, "This is you, Adolf Eichmann, SS 45283. And he keeps saying it over and over. Adolf Eichmann, SS 45283. Adolf Eichmann, SS 45283. And Eichmann is getting more and more annoyed. And finally, he says in his German accent, "I am Adolf Eichmann, SS 45326. He kept saying the wrong number to kind of get under his skin. Like, you're SS 45283. And then he had to correct him.
I can't believe that was his strategy, but it worked. I would have never thought of that.
It worked. Eichmann was cold. It's as if he shape-shifted. He finally revealed his true identity. And then he said in German, I won't say it in German because I will butcher it, but it translated to, "I have already resigned myself to my fate." The team had Eichmann, but the mission was not over. They had to get him out of Argentina without getting caught. They held him captive for 12 days in that safe house, the whole time interrogating him about his crimes and eventually getting him to sign the agreement to be tried in Israel. It is unclear how they got him to sign the agreement, but nonetheless, it was signed.
Man, I'd sign it for him. I don't give a shit. Exactly. When it comes to all the things he did, I don't care by any means. If I have to forge the signature or I have to beat his head on the paper until he does it, or maybe they chopped his dick off. No one wants their dick chopped off.
No one knows what happened in that safe house, like for sure. On May 22nd, they drugged him with enough of a sedative that he could not talk, but he was still conscious. They dressed him in a uniform and told the stewardess that he was a sick member of another commercial flight's crew who needed to get home immediately. And by 7:25 p.m. that day, the plane carrying Eichmann touched down in Tel Aviv. Operation Finale was a success. On May 23rd, the head of Mossad strolled into the parliament in Jerusalem and told them, "We have abducted Adolf Eichmann. He is here on Israeli soil, and he has agreed to be tried by the Jewish people." This became humongous news. Jews everywhere rejoiced. In the last 15 years following the Holocaust, the public in other parts of the world, especially America, had begun to forget what actually happened and what atrocities the Nazis did. Israel wanted this back in the public eye with hopes that the world would never forget. Argentina tried to get him back, but it didn't work. May 29th, his interrogation began. Israeli prosecutors started building a case against him. He was interviewed almost nonstop for 9 months, which amounted to 3,000 pages of notes. His trial began at 9 a.m. on April 11th, 1961. Eichmann was placed in a bulletproof glass box. He was indicted on 15 counts of crimes against the Jewish people and crimes against humanity, to which he pled not guilty.
He's probably going to claim that it was acts of war.
So listen to this. The reoccurring theme throughout his trial is that he was just a pencil pusher who sat in an office but never really killed anyone. He kept saying he just did what he was told. He was just obeying orders. The prosecution called 100 camp survivors to the stand to testify against him. He sat listening to them, stone cold, no emotion. At one point, one of the women testifying against him fainted as she walked into the courtroom and saw him, and he smirked.
Wow. I wonder if they appointed him a lawyer.
Oh, yeah, he had a lawyer.
Because I don't know the rules if in other countries you have to be represented by a public defender or, like in America, they assign you a lawyer.
No, he had a lawyer. He did. But, I mean, his defense was pretty weak.
No, I know. I was just wondering if he was sitting there on the stand and they're just saying stuff about him and then he had to say that's not true or he had someone.
So after this lady fainted, he smirked. I watched the whole trial, by the way. And it was fascinating to watch.
I didn't know they had video cameras. Well,
not the whole trial.
Then.
I watched the whole trial on YouTube, which is clips of the trial, not the entire thing.
Yeah, I didn't know they had good video cameras back then like that.
They did. It was 61, so they had video.
There was TV back then?
Russ.
I didn't know. I wasn't alive back then.
Some of the male witnesses screamed at him, called him names, spit at the glass. He just sat there, smirking.
They should have took a shit on that glass and made the whole thing stink inside because there was probably air holes. They should have put shit in the air holes.
The defense wasn't ready for the prosecution's smoking gun. While in Argentina, Eichmann befriended a Dutch Nazi journalist. The two men often hung out and drank together. And eventually, this journalist asked if he could record their conversations. In the recordings, we hear Eichmann callously boast about building the death camps, ordering the ovens, testing the gas chambers, watching thousands of Jews die. He spoke about how it was a privilege to cleanse Germany and the rest of Europe of the Jews, how it was his duty. He spoke about the Jewish people like we speak about a bug infestation, and extermination was the best solution. While the recordings played, he sat listening in shock. And he made these awkward faces. He was clearly uncomfortable. He was so uncomfortable the whole time. And watching him hear them the whole time, you're just like, fuck you, you terrible piece of shit. Ha ha. This is what you get. Because up until this point in the trial, he just kept saying I just do my job. I'm just sitting in an office. I'm doing my job. I'm a pencil pusher. I'm nobody. I'm just following orders and obeying the rules. That's kind of how he played it the whole time. And then you hear this recording of him boasting about it. It's disgusting. Finally, on December 15th, 1961, Eichmann was found guilty on all charges and sentenced to death.
It's too easy. They should have cut his dick off.
On June 1st, 1962, Adolf Eichmann was hanged. And at the time, Israel had a law against the death penalty, but they made this one exception for him. His body was then burned in an oven, and the ashes were spread in the Mediterranean Sea so that no one could have them and memorialize him. The news spread like wildfire, and it energized the Nazi hunting cause. all these Nazi hunters that had been working for years just got totally re-energized. And there are multiple Nazis that Nazi hunters ended up finding. Some of them, like, have you ever heard of Mengele, the doctor who did the experiments at Auschwitz on all of the people and the children?
I don't know the name, but I did hear about the experiments and the doctors. But
and he would literally cut off body parts and then sew them to other people's bodies. It was disgusting.
No, it's horrific.
So Mengele, Nazi hunters found him, but by the time they got the whole mission put together to go get him, he was dead. So this re-energized the Nazi hunting cause. And Sam Wiesenthal, he established a website eventually and an organization and got donations and continued hunting Nazis until his death.
Yeah, I was watching something, I don't know, within the past year or 2 or 3, about they found someone else. It could have been on Netflix, an old Nazi. And he was the guy was decrepit at this point, but they found him. And, they deny it at first, but they figure out it's really him.
Yeah, there is a Netflix documentary, but I don't remember the name of it. So the trial of Adolf Eichmann reveals the profound lesson that the capacity for evil is not only in the most depraved of hearts, but also in the ordinary individuals who become cogs in a ruthless machine. Eichmann had a chillingly mundane demeanor the whole time during his trial. And his defense, like I said, was just that he was, quote, following orders. This exposes how abandoning moral responsibility and critical thought can enable people to commit atrocities. Today, we must remain ever aware of how easily individuals can become complicit in cruelty, urging us to uphold our humanity and scrutinize authority figures, because we need to prevent history's darkest chapters from repeating.
Yeah, I think it's important to not worship our politicians.
Absolutely.
No, either side, they're just no matter what they say, they treat their political parties like religion, that no matter what they do, they're going to agree with it. And that's just blind following stuff is silly. You got to question everything.
You have to question everything. It's so important to critically think.
Because in this house and other houses, men, you can't just do what your wife says because she nags you. You have to question her authority.
Anyway, I was actually excited that you were talking about something serious for a second.
But I was.
So,
but my brain drifted, the wind blew, and I went the other direction.
I really feel like this story and the story of any story related to World War II and the Holocaust and the Nazis and Adolf Hitler shows us as the younger generation what not to do and how we can use this disgusting stain on our world history as an example of how to avoid, this type of group think in this massive way to ever happen again. It's disgusting and horrendous. But like I said in the beginning, there are heroes for every villain. You know what I mean? There are terrible characters in that story, but there are also heroes in that story.
So there's a Batman for every Joker.
Yeah, I mean, they worked for Mossad, they were spies, and they hunted this Nazi who wasn't just a regular, Nazi party member. He orchestrated the mass killing of people.
Yeah.
And I feel like it's amazing that they were able to catch him and successfully abduct him, and that he was able to be put to death and give a tiny ounce of justice to the Jewish people.
I wonder how the other Nazis feel that were alive. They were probably living in fear, they're going to find me.
Good.
No,
I hope they lived in fear. They haven't found a lot of Nazis. There are so many of them that were never found, that died never paying for their crimes. And I hope they lived in fear the whole time.
Yeah, live in paranoia.
I hope they looked behind their shoulder all the time, worried that they were going to get caught. That's the only thing we can hope for. because some of them didn't get caught. So it was highly publicized. It was on newspapers covers everywhere. It was on the front page everywhere. And so that is the hope that they did get really scared. But I think that, that show, Nazi Hunters.
Good show. You should watch it.
On Prime. Really good.
It's really good. It almost seems like it was directed by Quentin Tarantino and has dark humor in it.
A little bit, yeah.
It's like, yeah, it's funny to me. Like,
it's a shame that it's not a true story. I would love for it to be a true story. Like, I would love for there to be these vigilante people that were out there in the 60s and 70s killing these Nazis. I think it would be a fantastic true story. But I'm glad that we did have real Nazi hunters that did bring some of them to justice. And that's it. That's my case this week. I could go on for hours because I found out so many things I didn't know.
Well,
that I could literally create a whole series about this.
This week in Wife of History.
Wife of History?
Instead of Wife of Crime.
Oh. Yeah, I mean, it was...
We talked about the Nazis.
It was fascinating, and it was really humbling to read some of these accounts and watch these YouTube videos and listen to these podcasts of people. There's actually this conservative Jewish girl who has a TikTok, and I forgot her name.
What makes her conservative?
I will find it. I mean, she's Orthodox is what I meant to say.
Orthodox.
She's an Orthodox Jewish lady.
They wear all the black and stuff, right?
No, she doesn't. She just she wears a wig. But anyway, she's an Orthodox Jewish lady, and she has a TikTok to try to get people to understand her religion and stuff. Her grandmother was in Auschwitz, and her grandmother is on the TikTok talking about her experience. She asks her questions about it, and she gives her experience. She was a girl in Auschwitz.
It's wild.
And it's so crazy. And actually, Mengele was called the angel of death because everyone said you only saw him once, because if you saw him once, you died. Her grandmother interacted with Mengele 3 times.
Wow.
And she was liberated. Some of her stories are so horrendous, but when you see her, she's a grandma. You see her and you're like, oh my God, she lived through this.
Is she old, 100?
She's probably a little older than my grandmother's. I mean, she has to be.
But your grandmas are 100.
No, they're not. They're in their 80s. So she's probably in her 90s.
Oh, so she's
but she doesn't
old.
Look super old. But it's fascinating to hear her grandmother's stories. I'll show her to you.
It's wild. All right, guys. So that was another episode in this week's Wife of Crime, a.k.a. Wife of History. And we ain't going to leave you no mystery because we answer all the questions.
You're weird.
And we have social medias. You can go check us out at Wife of Crime Pod on Instagram. And then we got some dope-ass merch on wifeofcrime.com. If you don't got nothing to wear, don't despair, because you can go over there and get a little bit of flair.
Are you a poet today? What is happening?
Well, I'm like Clyde. Clyde is my hero. Well, Clyde Frazier.
All right, everybody. Have a wonderful week. We will be back soon. Bye.